Welcome back, everyone. Some of Orthodox Sunni theology comes from the Ash'arites, who had to deal with questions raised by the Islamic doctrine of the absolute oneness of Allah. One interesting question that absolute oneness raises is the question of how Allah relates to his attributes. Dr. Imad Shahade explains. The Ash'arites accepted the eternality of God's attributes of action, such as creation, love, or speech. But since absolute oneness rejects the existence of any eternal relationship in God as a source of his attributes, the conclusion was that the attributes of action stem from his will. This statement has very important implications. Consider the attribute of love. If Allah is said to be loving, that seems to tell you something about his nature. But all that really means, according to Asharite theology, is that divine attributes like love point back only to Allah's all-powerful will. Allah's attributes are not subjected to his nature. They're subjected to his will. In short, this theology makes Allah's nature entirely unknowable. Thus, one cannot say Allah is loving. Rather, all one can say is that Allah, in some specific circumstance, willed to be loving. Dr. Shehadeh quotes Ismail al-Faruqi. The will of God is the nature of God, insofar as I can know anything about him. This is God's will, and that is all we have. But God does not reveal himself to anyone. Christians talk about the revelation of God himself, by God, of God, but that is the great difference. You may not have complete transcendence and self-revelation at the same time. Such theology entails that a God of absolute oneness is a God of absolute transcendence, and is therefore unknowable. But there's more to say. Such theology renders Allah unpredictable as well. Dr. Shehadeh quotes a number of scholars on this point. Here's Al-Razi. It is possible, according to our religion, that God may send blasphemers to paradise, and the righteous and worshippers to eternal fire, because ownership belongs to him, and no one can stop him. These hadith are cited as authentic by Ibn Taymiyyah. God holds firmly to two matters, and so he said, "This goes to paradise, and I do not care, and this goes to the fire, and I do not care." God, when he created Adam, showed him his descendants to the right and left, and then said, "Those to the fire, and I do not care, and those to paradise, and I do not care." In this hadith in Sahih Muslim, Muhammad states that Allah's decree will manifest at the last minute, when people are effectively inches away from paradise. At that point, Allah's destiny will overcome him, and he will thus enter hell or paradise. Allah's apparent capriciousness is also on display in the Quran, which affirms numerous times that Allah leads astray and forgives whomever he pleases. It's interesting to note that Surah 7:126 implies that the state in which one dies is ultimately up to Allah. Our Lord, pour out on us patience, and take us as ones who have submitted. Gabriel Reynolds comments, in this regard, it is perhaps worth pointing out the opinion of the theologian Ash'ari that it is not possible even to say, "I am a Muslim," without adding, "if God wills." Regarding Allah's promises, Sayyid Qutb notes, every time the Quran states a definite promise or constant law, it follows it with a statement implying that the divine will is free of all limitations and restrictions, even those based on a promise from Allah or a law of his. For his will is absolute beyond any promise or law. Now, Qutb says that every time the Quran states a definite promise, it follows it with such a statement. However, I can think of a couple of exceptions to this, but overall, his point is substantial. Allah is therefore ultimately unpredictable. Muslims have no assurance of knowing whether Allah has rightly guided them to paradise or will lead them astray into hell. As the messenger of the Quran says, "I do not know what will be done with me or with you." Allah thus appears unknowable and unpredictable. To the Muslims watching this, I have a simple request. I know you love contemplating Christian theology. I do too. But think about your theology for a second and answer some questions. I'll put them in the pinned comment just to help you keep on topic. Can Allah's attributes, such as love, be active apart from relationship? If so, explain. Can you know anything about the nature of Allah, or can you only know His will? Are attributes of action, such as Allah's speech, separate from His essence? Is the Quran created or uncreated? What is the meaning of Allah's anthropomorphic expressions in the Quran? Do you believe Allah reveals Himself to you? If so, how and to what extent? Has Allah promised that all Muslims will go to paradise? If so, is He bound to that promise? Be careful how you answer those questions. You can easily get yourself in more trouble than Muhammad home alone with one of his wife's slave girls. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.